On a cold Saturday in Columbus, Ohio, a 26-year-old with no real estate experience and $11,400 in savings signed for a property worth $312,000. A tired brick fourplex, 4 small apartments, 1 staircase, a shared basement with a furnace older than the buyer. He did not have a quarter of the purchase price. He did not have a tenth of it. He had $11,400 and a specific legal strategy that let that be enough. He moved into one of the 4 units. He rented the other 3. And from the very first month, the rent from those 3 units covered the entire mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance with money left over. He was not paying to own a building. The building was paying him to live in it. In the next 30 minutes, we are going to open this deal. Every number, every line of the financing, every renovation dollar, every mistake. Anatomy of the deal. Here is how this episode is structured. House hacking is a plain idea with a casual name. You buy a small property with more than one place to live. You live in one of those places, you rent out the others, and the rent from the others pays most or all of your housing costs. So why does this matter so much? For almost everyone, the single largest monthly expense in life is housing, rent, or a mortgage payment. It is money that goes out every month and never comes back. House hacking attacks that one expense directly. If the other units cover your mortgage, then the largest line item in your budget drops towards 0, or even flips positive, where the property pays you. And the money you are no longer spending on housing can be saved or invested or used to buy the next property. House hacking is, for most people, the single fastest legal way to free up the cash to start investing at all. But here is the part that makes house hacking genuinely powerful, and it is a financing point. When you buy a property you are going to live in, you are an owner-occupant. Owner-occupants get a completely different and far better class of loan than investors do. A pure investor buying a rental typically needs to put 20 to 25% down. An owner-occupant, someone who will actually live in the property, can often buy with 3 to 5% down, sometimes less. And here is the key fact that makes house hacking work. That low down payment owner-occupant financing is allowed not just on a single family house, but on properties of up to 4 units. 1 loan, owner-occupant terms, 4 income-producing apartments. There is one honest rule attached to this. Owner-occupant financing requires that you genuinely intend to live in the property, and typically that you actually live there for at least 1 year. This is not a loophole, and it is not a trick. It is a real loan program with a real residency requirement, and you must honor it. But within that rule, the strategy is completely legitimate. You live in the property for at least a year, as the loan requires. The other units pay the bills the entire time. And after the residency period, you are free to move out, keep the property as a pure rental, and do it all again. Now, the money, and specifically how $11,400 was enough to control a $312,000 building. The buyer used a low down payment owner-occupant loan of the kind designed for first-time buyers on a 4-unit property. The purchase price was $312,000. The down payment requirement on this particular loan for a multi-unit owner-occupant purchase was 3.5%. 3.5% of $312,000 is $10,920. Round it with a small additional cushion, and that is the $11,400. The loan covered the remaining $301,000. Now, the closing also required money beyond the down payment, and this is where buyers often get surprised. Closing costs, the lender fees, the title work, the appraisal, the prepaid taxes, and insurance set-asides ran about $9,000. The buyer covered part of that out of pocket, but he also negotiated a seller credit. The seller agreed to contribute about $5,000 toward the buyer's closing costs, effectively a small price concession routed through closing. Seller credits toward closing costs are common and completely standard, And on a low cash purchase, they can be the difference between closing and not closing. Between the down payment and his share of closing costs, the buyer's total cash into this deal was right around $15,000. And we will use $11,400 as the down payment headline because the down payment is the figure that controls the asset. The loan terms themselves. A 30-year fixed rate mortgage, a rate at the time of about 6.75%. Because the down payment was small, well under 20%, the loan also carried mortgage insurance, an extra monthly charge that protects the lender on a low down payment loan. That mortgage insurance is a real cost, and it is the price you pay for being allowed to buy with so little down. On this loan, the mortgage insurance added roughly $190 a month. We will fold it into the numbers because an honest deal breakdown counts every dollar. So before we even look at the fourplex itself, hold the structure in your head. A first-time buyer with about $15,000 of total cash used a low down payment owner-occupant loan to control a $312,000 4-unit income property. An investor buying that same fourplex as a pure rental would have needed roughly $75,000 down. The owner-occupant strategy did the same thing for 1/5 of the cash. The catch is real and simple. He had to live there. And living there, as you will see, was not a catch at all. Now the asset itself. The fourplex. The property. A 2-story brick fourplex built in 1962. 4 units, all the same layout, each a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment of about 800 square feet. A shared basement with the laundry hookups, the furnace, and the water heaters. A small shared parking area in back. When the buyer found it, 3 of the 4 units were occupied by tenants on month-to-month arrangements, paying below market rent. The 4th unit was vacant, and that vacant unit is the one the buyer would move into. Now the deal math, and this is the heart of the episode. Let's build the monthly picture. First, the cost side, what the buyer owed every month. The mortgage principal and interest on the $301,000 loan came to about $1,950 a month. Property taxes, about $450. Insurance, about $140. The mortgage insurance, about $190. All in, the monthly cost to own and carry the fourplex was approximately $2,730. Now the income side. 3 of the 4 units were rented. At purchase, those 3 tenants were paying below market, about $750 each for a total of $2,250 a month. Compare that to the monthly cost of $2,730. So on day 1, even before the buyer paid a cent toward his own living, the 3 existing rents already covered about 82% of the entire cost of the building. The buyer's effective housing cost to live in a 2-bedroom apartment of his own was the gap, about $480 a month. Pause on that. A 26-year-old was about to live in his own 2-bedroom apartment for $480 a month in a city where renting a comparable 2-bedroom on the open market cost well over $1,000. But the buyer was not done because those 3 rents were below market, and that gap was the opportunity. Comparable 2-bedroom units in renovated buildings nearby were renting for around $1,150. The buyer's plan was to renovate each unit as it turned and bring all 4 rents up toward that market number. And once that was done, the math would not just cover his housing, it would flip positive. Now the renovation. And a live-in renovation is its own particular discipline. The buyer moved into the vacant 4th unit and renovated it first while living in it. Then, as each of the other 3 leases ended over the following 18 months, he renovated that unit during the turnover before releasing it. He did not push the existing tenants out. He let their month-to-month arrangements run and renovated naturally as each one chose to move on. Total renovation budget across all 4 units, about $36,000, or roughly $9,000 per unit. The per unit work. This was a rental grade renovation, not a luxury one. Durable, clean, and built to lease. Luxury vinyl plank flooring replacing the worn carpet, fresh paint throughout in one consistent neutral, a refreshed kitchen, new cabinet fronts over the sound existing boxes, a durable laminate counter, a clean appliance package. A refreshed bathroom, new vanity, new toilet, new fixtures. Updated lighting, new hardware, new blinds. The same modest, repeatable package 4 times. How did the buyer pay for the renovation, given that he had spent nearly all his cash to close? This is an honest and important point. He did not have $36,000 sitting in the bank. He funded the renovation gradually out of the cash flow the building itself produced. Remember, even on day one, the 3 existing rents covered most of the building's cost. As he renovated and released units at higher rents, the building threw off more and more spare cash each month, and he funneled that spare cash straight back into the next unit's renovation. The first unit he funded with a modest renovation loan and his own remaining savings. After that, the building largely renovated itself. That is the quiet magic of a property that pays for itself. It can also slowly pay to improve itself. By the end of month 18, all 4 units were renovated and leased. The 3 turned units, plus the buyer's own unit, which he would eventually rent, were now market ready. Renovated rents settled at about $1,100 a unit, a touch under the $1,150 target, but close. 4 units at $1,100 is $4,400 a month of potential rent against that building cost of roughly $2,730. The picture had completely changed. Now, operations in house hacking has one feature no other strategy has. You live in the deal. You are the landlord, and you are also the neighbor. The advantages of living on site are real. The buyer was always there. A maintenance problem was noticed immediately, not 3 weeks later when it had become expensive. A leaking valve, a failing water heater, a roof drip, all caught early. Showing a vacant unit to a prospective tenant cost him a walk down the stairs, not a scheduled trip across town. And he could screen tenants partly on the simple fact that he would be living next to them, which quietly raised the quality of who applied and who he chose. An on-site owner runs a tighter, cleaner building almost automatically. But this episode is honest, so the disadvantages get equal time. Living next to your tenants means there is no separation between your home and your job. A complaint can knock on your actual door on a Sunday. A late night noise problem is your problem in a way it is not for an off-site landlord. And there is a real social discomfort in being both the neighbor and the person who has to enforce the lease, raise the rent, or in a hard case, pursue an eviction. The buyer handled this with one firm rule. All official landlord business went through email, a written notice, or the property's separate phone line, never a hallway conversation. He kept the roles physically and procedurally separate, even while living 30 feet from his tenants. Now, the operating numbers run honestly. With all 4 units renovated, potential rent was about $4,400 a month. But while the buyer still lived there, 1 unit produced no rent because he was in it. So 3 units rented, about $3,300 a month coming in against a building cost of $2,730. That is about $570 of positive cash flow every month, while the buyer lived in a renovated 2-bedroom apartment for free, not at a discount, for free with money left over. His single largest life expense had not been reduced. It had been erased and reversed. Now the move that completes the strategy. After the required residency period, the buyer moved out, and the fourplex became a pure rental. He had lived in the property for a little over 2 years, well past the 1-year residency the loan required. Now he rented out his own former unit, which made all 4 units income producing. 4 units at about $1,100, and by now, with another year of market growth, closer to $1,150 is roughly $4,600 a month of gross rent against the building cost. And the building cost was about to improve too. Here is the refinance. After more than 2 years of ownership, two things had changed in the buyer's favor. First, the property was worth far more. A renovated, fully leased fourplex producing strong rent appraised at about $390,000 against the $312,000 he had paid. Second, the renovated, higher rents made it a strong candidate to refinance. He refinanced into a new loan based on the higher value, and critically, because the property now had real equity, the new loan no longer required mortgage insurance. That alone removed about $190 a month of cost. So the final picture as a pure rental. Gross rent of about $4,600 a month against the new loan payment, taxes, and insurance, now without the mortgage insurance, of roughly $2,600. But a careful operator does not stop there. As a pure rental, you must also reserve for the things a homeowner pays as they come. Vacancy between tenants, repairs, future capital items like a roof or a furnace, and property management. Set aside a realistic allowance for all of that. Call it $900 a month. What is left, the genuine monthly cash flow into the owner's pocket, is roughly $1,100 a month. Now let's add up what this deal actually did. 3 years from that cold Saturday at the closing table. The equity. The fourplex was worth about $390,000. The mortgage balance after the refinance was about $268,000. That is roughly $122,000 of equity. The buyer's total cash into the deal ever was about $15,000. He had turned $15,000 into $122,000 of equity in 3 years. And that is before counting a single dollar of the cash flow or the free housing along the way. The equity came from 3 sources stacked together: the renovation that forced the value up, the loan paydown the tenants quietly funded every month, and ordinary market appreciation. Now, the part that is hard to put a single number on, but matters most: the free housing. For more than 2 years, the buyer lived for free, and for much of it, the building paid him a few $100s a month on top. Conservatively, against what renting a comparable apartment would have cost him, house hacking saved or generated on the order of $30,000 over those 2+ years. And that saved money is what made the strategy compounding. Because he was not spending money on rent, he was able to save, and the savings became the down payment on his next house hack, a second small multifamily he bought the year after he moved out. So who got paid on this deal? There is no LP waterfall here, no outside investors. It is one buyer, one owner-occupant loan, and his tenants. The lender earned its interest. The tenants, in exchange for clean, renovated apartments at a fair market rent, collectively paid down the buyer's loan and covered his costs. And the buyer earned the rest. Free housing for 2 years, $122,000 of equity, $1,100 a month of ongoing cash flow, and the financial runway to do it again. All of it started with $11,400 and the decision to buy a building with 4 front doors instead of 1. No deal is clean. 3 honest mistakes the buyer made on this one. Mistake 1. The buyer budgeted the first unit's renovation at $6,000 and it cost closer to $11,000. As a first-time renovator, he missed hidden costs, old wiring that needed attention, a plumbing repair behind a wall, and nearly ran out of cash before the unit was rentable. On every unit after, he budgeted with a real contingency and confirmed he could fund the worst case before starting. Mistake 2. When he bought the building, he kept all 3 inherited month-to-month tenants without rescreening them. One of them paid late, consistently, for over a year, and was eventually a difficult and slow move out. He learned that inheriting a tenant is inheriting a decision someone else made, and that, where the law allows, a new owner should re-qualify inherited tenants rather than simply accept them. Mistake 3. He carried the mortgage insurance about a year longer than necessary. Once the renovations and the market had pushed the property's value up, he had enough equity to refinance out of mortgage insurance well before he actually did, which cost him roughly $2,000 in avoidable monthly charges. He now tracks his equity position actively and refinances out of mortgage insurance the moment the numbers allow it. That is the anatomy of an $11,400 down payment that erased a mortgage. One brick fourplex on a quiet Columbus street. A low down payment, owner-occupant loan. 3 years of living in the deal, renovating it, and then renting it out fully. $122,000 of equity, $1,100 a month of cash flow, 2 years of free housing. All from the simple decision to buy a building with 4 front doors, live behind one of them, and let the other 3 pay the bills. Future episodes of this channel will go deeper. We will do larger deals, distressed deals, deals that failed, deals in other markets and other asset classes with other capital stacks. But the structure of every episode will be the same. We open the deal. We show you every number. We name every mistake. Anatomy of the deal. If you want to see real numbers on real deals, subscribe. We are just getting started.